real and difficult place.
What are some of the things that are going on over there? What types of industries are sort of percolating up? Is there a concentration of a certain type of technology?
One of the things that you see in the emerging markets generally, for those of you who have been to China or India or whatever else, even Israel, I think it was this way 20 years ago, is there tends to be first, I think, a stage of what I'll call Me Tooism. The Arab market is a very large market. There are 350 million people who speak Arabic. But of that, literally less than 2% of the content online is in Arabic. So what you see first is a bucket of people who are literally trying to build businesses that you'd all be very familiar with, social networks or content sites or whatever, but doing it in Arabic with also very interesting sensitivities to the culture. It's not just translation, but it's that kind of a thing. Then you got a group of people, and these are just some of the most inspiring folks to me, who I just can call them problem solvers. I mean, they look at things which are fucked up in their countries, or become convinced that the government is not going to fix it anytime soon, so they now view it as a software problem. And so they're coming up with mobile devices and really interesting technologies to help you safely find a cab in Cairo. And if you ever tried to find a cab in Cairo, you know it's almost impossible. They're literally trying to help us navigate traffic in Cairo through mobile apps. I've seen these amazing education things that are happening in platforms to help people in different ways. That to me has been very exciting. And then the third bucket is you got these kids who are literally, I mean, they want to change the world. And they're thinking about globally competitive ideas based on unique experiences that are happening in regions. So for example, mobile penetration in most emerging markets, particularly in the Middle East, is about 130%. They're way ahead of us. Smartphone penetration is about 8%. I saw when I was there 4 months ago, Vodafone has just launched a mobile computing device, you know, not quite an iPhone, but an amazing smartphone for less than $40. I think within the next 3 to 4 years, 50% of the emerging markets are going to have computing on their person. So folks are thinking about what can I do with that and maybe build something that's not only interesting in the region but elsewhere. But look, even at China, I mean, China has not had a lot of technology IPOs. There's a lot of Me Tooism there. Baidu was a big deal. It out-Googled Google in China, but it's not like anybody here is using Baidu. This stuff takes time, but it has huge ramifications in the middle classes of these countries.
Right, and you said that to start a business in the Middle East is very inexpensive, relatively speaking. What about venture capital and angels? How's the market for capital there?
There's a wonderful quote that someone said to me on one of my trips there, which said, you know, the problem is not that we have the money. We have the money. The problem is that it's in our pockets. And it's amazing to me because literally people are still struggling to raise a $20 million, $25, $50 million venture capital fund. Now, stop and think about the math that I'm talking about before. $25 million, you could put a lot to work if you're investing $25,000 or $50,000 at a time. But it's still very nascent. Culturally, people don't like to bet in things, 80% of whom are going to go under. They love to show their friends they just built the new Four Seasons and whatever. I mean, there's a real cultural divide that's slow. But I could tell you, and I don't think this has been reported much, but Kleiner Perkins opened an office in Istanbul as a platform to look at other things in the region. You're going to see more and more. Google has huge presence throughout this region, not just as a sales arm, but actually investing in companies. The cell companies are doing the same. We're in early days, but it's a very powerful narrative, the alternative, which, of course, is tragic.
Right, and you are writing a book called Arab Incubate,
yeah.
And are you going to be covering a lot of the topics we just...
The book is going to focus on the Arab world as a case study of this broader question that I have. You know, I actually spent a lot of time with my friends out in Silicon Valley to talk about this, was it possible, because of this ubiquity and access to amazing information technology, that innovation is going to have a different form? And the most common question I hear from folks is, what's going to be the Silicon Valley of the Middle East? Like everyone thinks we're like third place or fourth place. So, I mean, look, Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. It's an extraordinary thing. But the idea that there's going to be another one, I think, is narrow-minded. I think what's more interesting is there are going to be pockets of innovation in our country and around the world where, because of the connectedness people can have, they can actually innovate in very powerful ways. Now, don't get me wrong. There's no substitute for you and I sitting here and talking. This is different than you and I being on the phone or communicating on Skype or what have you. But if that's all you've got, there's amazing collaboration that can happen. And so I'm pulling the string on these questions. I'm trying to understand why our guys in the West Coast and here aren't looking at this as an emerging market the way they might have looked at China or Israel and India, and thinking there may be something here that could be pretty interesting, not next year, but probably over the next decade.
I mean, political unrest is probably a big reason, right?
I mean, look, it's the political unrest. It's the role of the government, both getting out of the way and building an infrastructure. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum of industrial policy, but there's no question the government of Korea played a very central role in why Korea became what it came. Singapore would be another obvious example of that. I've not yet seen, you know, any kind of government movement to take it by the horns in that way, and I think that can be a part of it. So it's not just about the political unrest, it's the other things that are going on. But again, to me, what's so interesting because of technology is nobody's waiting. I mean, these kids have got access to it. Their mobile access, even at a broadband level in some of these countries, are more reliable than I get on my goddamn iPhone in New York City. And so they've got the stuff, and in fact, they've never had to deal with landlines. So it's going to be interesting to see. But as we saw in the last 24 hours, we will see what's happening. Some of the most inspiring kids that I saw 18 months ago was in one of the most beautiful cities I've been to in the Middle East, which is Damascus. Look at it now, right? There are going to be politicians, and there are going to be gangs, and there are going to be people for a host of different reasons who are going to play a 20th century game to 21st century realities. And I'm not predicting anything here. I'm just fascinated by it.